What is up, everyone? This video will cover how to demonstrate ties during your B1, B2 visa interview. I'm your host, Janet, and I take frequently asked questions from UDETI's social media and ask them to UDETI's founder and former United States visa officer, Yvette Bansal. Hi, Yvette.
Hey, thanks, Janet. It's a great way to cover topics that our followers are interested in. And we also have a blog on UDETIVisa.com that details a lot of topics if people are curious beyond the scope of this video.
Excellent, Yvette. Let's jump right in. So, Yvette, many applicants struggle with this concept of ties. So, can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. So first, a B1, B2 visa is a short-term tourist visa to the United States. It can be used for tourism, family visits, conferences, work meetings. To demonstrate ties, an officer will ask themselves what the applicant has in their home country that would prevent them from abandoning it and misusing the visa in the United States. So what ties this person to their home country? That's what ties is. Older people, for example, have homes, pensions, grandkids, siblings, and they have an established life in their home country. They have lots of ties to their home country, right? More ties than a single young person. That's why visa approval rates for an older person are generally better. They generally don't always have as many ties, younger people, as older people. That doesn't mean they're not qualified for a visa. It just means that they have to discuss whatever ties they do have, like their job, education, residence, etc. Now, the officer will not ask, what are your ties? They're going to ask questions to understand the ties that individual has for themselves.
That makes sense. So, Yvette, how can applicants effectively demonstrate these ties during their interview?
So first, make sure that your DS-160 is properly reflecting your good work history, education, your income, because those are all ties. We have blogs on how to properly fill out a DS-160 on UDETIVisa.com. Check it out. Make sure that your DS-160 is pristine. If you have a job, make sure that you're bulleting all the duties that you have. If you have a higher income, that's really good ties for your home country. If you're older and have a pension, that's really good home ties. So basically a pristine DS-160, you start there. Second, make sure you're prepared to answer questions about your family and your home country. If you live with a large family, you can mention that. If you have a wife and she's not traveling with you, like say you're going for a conference, please mention that. If you have children and you're going for a work conference, please also mention that. If you're traveling with an entire family, then you can talk about your home. If you're living in a joint family, all these things tie you to your home country. So understand your strength. Basically, find a way to communicate whatever ties you back to your home country so that the officer knows that you have something to lose and that you have an intention of using your visa well and returning to your place of residence. But of course, even though you identify those strengths, you have to communicate them in a natural way to the officer. You can't just rattle off a list of ties. They have to be asked naturally, and then you have to understand the concept of ties and tie that into your answer so that you answer naturally as well.
Okay, but what about applicants who are self-employed or do not have traditional ties like a job or property? How can they demonstrate their ties?
Those are great questions. You're asking all the hard things, Janet. Applicants in those categories are a little bit more at risk, but what else can tie you back to your home country? Maybe they have a higher level of education, or if they're self-employed, maybe they're really successfully self-employed so that they can mention that. Or if they have a brick and mortar, if they actually they're self-employed, but they actually have a shop, they have property. If they have any sort of immovable assets, those are all wonderful ties. If you have a lot of immovable assets, even if you're young, you need to go back to your home country in order to take care of those immovable assets. You wouldn't risk just disappearing in the United States. So again, if you have a large family, you can mention that. So even people who don't have traditional jobs or not self-employed, they may have other things that tie them back to their home country. So focus on those things.
Okay, so that's very helpful advice, Yvette. So my next question is, are there any common mistakes or misconceptions applicants should be aware of when, trying to prove their ties?
So common things are people assume it's always about how much money the person has, and that's not the only way that ties can be proven. If you are making a lot of money and you are able to explain that to the consular officer, that's great, but you can also mention other things that tie you back to your home country. For example, even if you don't make a lot of money, but you're a professor or you have a doctorate degree from your home country, that ties you back to your home country. You have a lot to lose. You've attained a high level of education back in your home country. So the officer is going to look at that as a tie. Or maybe you're going for a work trip, but you have a lower income, but you have a wife and children in your home country, and you can mention that. So it's not always about money. Ties are so much more than just that. And I think there's a misconception. As long as I make enough, I think I'll be okay for the visa interview. And the second thing is we don't have your finances. So just because you make a lot doesn't mean that we necessarily know that. So if you do have immovable assets and you do have good income, make sure that you're mentioning that. Otherwise, the officer may not be able to tell. So just remember that this is all very general advice. Your purpose of travel also needs to make sense too. So just because you have a lot of really good ties, your purpose of travel needs to make sense. Why are you going to the US? It needs to make sense with your overall profile. So make sure that you're explaining your purpose of travel really well. Everyone has a unique story, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Yvette, for sharing your valuable insights on demonstrating these ties during a B1, B2 visa interview. It's been a pleasure having you here, Yvette.
Thank you so much, Janet.
And to our listeners, thank you so much. If you have more questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to comment down below. Also, subscribe to keep getting more insider information. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Until next time, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.